I'm honored to be serving for you. If I could, GFWAR, would you mind coming up here and give us the invocation, please?
Good morning. These are some words that I shared with this group about 4 years ago. I have kept them immediately available and refer to them from time to time because I find them very meaningful. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you're honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, others will be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's between you and God, between you and them anyway.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, I'd like to ask Ken Wimberly to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could stand as well.
Flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to welcome any new members or guests that may be in attendance. If you just raise your hand and let us know if you're a new member or a guest this morning. Our friends at BLP, thank you very much for coming.
We have Danny Wilkerson right here.
Okay, Danny's one of our new members. Danny, thanks for coming this morning.
Hey Tyler, I want to welcome, we have some existing members with Alamo, and then we got the Lake Worth office. We have Jenna Hopper, Sarah Ward, Janet Langford, and Judy Langford, Andrew Sherman, and then Brandon Baker, who's going last year. So we got some new Alamo faces over here at the table.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming. I also neglected to mention, along with Captain Bennett, is Captain Gil Miller and Rachel Wiggins from the reserve base as well. Thank you for coming this morning as well. If Huck Newberry would get a chance to come up here and talk about our SCR scholarship.
I actually have a guest too. Paul Jordan is new with our firm. He's right here in front table. I think everybody knows the scholarship fund is for incoming freshmen in college or graduating seniors, as the case may be. We honor them with usually 3 scholarships of approximately $1,500 each. So I'll be passing around the box and of course getting it started with this right here, and I appreciate the generosity. Thanks.
Thank you, Huck. Just a couple of announcements to make. We're sitting at our breakfast this morning, or at our table, and Jim was asking about why we're having Captain Bennett mic'd up, and there's a camera over here recording. One of the things that we're doing with the association now is we're trying to record a lot of our presentations and seminars, educational, or just any additional speakers that are coming in that we can post online. So that if you can't attend the event, you can pull it up later and view it. We had a technology meeting yesterday, and one of our recent presentations, we had a pretty good attendance, but then we had about 51 people in the last week download the presentation and review it. And those types of things are going to be online. They're going to be posted through YouTube so that they can be there into perpetuity, and you can keep going back and reviewing the different seminars. So you should be seeing our setup like this with the camera, and just know that that kind of technology is going to be available to you. I know the thing that we have that is going to be, I think, very beneficial to the members is we're working on an app. Clay was in a meeting yesterday, and we're saying that applications are not just for college anymore. They're actually for your phones and your iPads. So we're coming up with a GFWAR app that we'll be able to push out to all the members so you can see with different events that are coming up. You can look at your account and see where you are from a dues standpoint. There'll be MLS capabilities for our residential members. So we're trying to do a lot of these things to stay on top of the technology curve, or at least be ahead of it if we can. The next XCR breakfast is going to be in August 28th. We're going to have a legislative update. We're going to have Mark Vesey and Roger Williams are planned to come in and speak and just kind of let us know what's going on from a legislative standpoint. I think that's going to be a very good, very good event, very informative to hear what they've come up with this last session. Also, we're going to have the Real Estate Summit. I know a lot of people try and plan ahead to get their licenses done. I know the Real Estate Summit is offered every 2 years at the association. It's a 2-day class. It's solely focused on commercial real estate to get your MCE requirements. We're working on the speakers right now. We're going to have a great list. Actually, Captain Bennett spoke 2 years ago at our last summit, which is one of the reasons we asked you to come back and speak, because he did such a great job last time.
Should
if you're going to have
videotape
your
that
license entered, no matter when your license renews, as long as it's not between now and September, we would encourage you to take the MCR Summit. You've got a lot of good information, and then it sets you up for the next 2 years. So even if your license expires next year, you can take your classes now and be set for the next 2 years, and then just get on a 2-year rotation of taking going to the summit.
You got those dates?
September 25th and 26th. And there'll be some correspondence going to be coming out relatively soon showing you the list of speakers that we have. I'd like to ask Ken Wimberly to come back up, if you don't mind. As you all know, Ken Wimberly won the William C. Jennings Award for the association with his commercial real estate transaction of the year with the successful purchase or acquisition of a portion of the Six Flags Mall. And Ken, there was a news article that was framed, and so we wanted to provide that to you this morning and say thanks again for representing our association so well, and congratulations on it. Robert Gleason's going to come up and provide us with the legislative update.
We're also going to be videotaping how much you put in the scholarship box. Well, the session wrapped up about 5 p.m. on Monday, and then by 6 p.m. they were already back in a special session for redistricting. Luckily, our association has nothing to do with redistricting. We're glad to be out of that, but we did have a very productive regular session. Our major legislative goal this time around was fully funding the state's water plan, making sure we've got enough water infrastructure for the next 50 years in this state so we can make sure to grow both commercially and residentially. We were successful in passing HB4. This established a state water infrastructure bank, but our work's not over yet. In November, voters will go to the polls and they'll have to approve an allocation of $2 billion from the state's rainy day fund. So we're going to be doing a big effort, your association, to try to get people out to the polls to make sure they understand how important this is. The funds are used for water infrastructure. They provide low-cost loans to municipalities around the state who are doing major water projects and major funding. And so it's estimated that this $2 billion investment will have a return of about $27 billion in projects on down the road to fully fund our state's water plan. So when that does come out, please keep an eye out for that campaign. But we were very glad to be able to pass at least the establishment of the Water Infrastructure Bank and then making sure to get this allocation on the ballot in November. Other bills that will impact your business, HB 585. This is one of our appraisal reform bills. We've been involved in a multi-session effort to improve the appraisal system. And this bill has several items to it It works on, it improves the administration of property valuation hearings when you go in. There's several items in there that are favorable to property owners going forward. It also adds some education for appraisal review board members, and all in all, this part and parcel of our efforts to reform that system on behalf of property owners. HB 500, this is a cut in the franchise tax of $700 million, and then it made permanent the franchise tax exclusion of up to $1 million for small business, which impacts, I think, virtually all of our members. And so that was a real positive. We also were successful in defeating a couple of pieces of legislation which could have had a major negative impact. Legislation was filed that would have expanded the sales tax onto the transfer of real estate, able to defeat that. And then another piece of legislation that was filed would have mandated sales price disclosure for commercial real estate specifically. So both of those were not passed by the legislature. A couple of, all in all, a very good session. A couple of City of Fort Worth issues would like to go over with you. The city is reviewing their stormwater design and review process. So for any of you who have been involved in development or have had clients who have, there has been a push to reform this process and make it more customer friendly to developers coming in, as well as to make it more in line with what some other cities are doing to great success. So if you have any experience or comments on this or recommendations, please share those with me, and I'll make sure that the task force hears it. We're really trying to fast track this task force, so it'll be finished by the end of July. So please submit, you call me or email me your comments on stormwater issues. We're also working on an ordinance that would fully exempt properties from the transportation impact fee when they go in for a change of use. Currently, properties, if you go in and you've got one commercial use and then your new commercial use of that property results in a 10 times or greater increase in the amount of traffic generated. Say if you have a church and you want to go to a daycare, or if you have an office and you're going to a high volume medical office, then in those situations you would have to pay the transportation impact fee, which can be very substantial. The ordinance that we're moving forward with would actually remove that requirement so that all change of use, no matter what your traffic count change, would be exempt, because it was penalizing existing properties for redevelopment. So we're very positive that hopefully we'll be able to get that legislation passed. And then finally, there is an upcoming runoff election. This will be on June the 15th. Early voting begins on June the 3rd. Some of our endorsed candidates are going to be in this race, so when you get that email about our voting guide, please get out and vote. And I think this last election in May demonstrates that one of our school board candidates, Ashley Paz, that we're supporting, it's in the Ryan Place Fairmount area. She was 7 votes away from winning outright and not ending up in the runoff. But if she had had those 7 votes, the election would have been over with and she would have won. So you may think your vote, one vote doesn't matter, but in these municipal low turnout elections, your vote really could make all the difference. So please do get out there and vote on those. Anybody have any questions on the legislative session or any of those topics? Okay, just one more word about the session. It is possible that due to redistricting being the only thing on the call right now, it's possible that there could be other items added to that call. There's been several statewide political figures who have come out with a list of proposals to add to that call. But right now, our main focus is on making sure that the water funding and funding for our long-term water infrastructure is going to be our main legislative goal. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Robert. At this time, I'd like to welcome VLK Architects, who is our title sponsor for the event, and ask Sloan Harris to come up and talk a little bit about the VLK.
Thank you, Tyler. For those of you who don't know us, we're VLK Architects. We're here in Fort Worth. We office on West 7th Street. We work directly with some of you in the room. We specialize in educational and corporate projects. What that means is a lot of ground up training facilities, schools, universities, corporate office finish out. We assist a lot of our partners, such as Case Commercial, with space planning on the front end as they try to work with their clients to place them in space. So we are a full-service firm, and we would certainly like to help any of you with any of your needs as well. I am introducing Captain Robert Bennett, and when I spoke with him this morning, he asked that I not go through his resume from top to bottom. And I'm not in the Navy, but I do know that when the officer in charge gives you an order,
good job, Sloan.
I certainly am going to follow his order this morning, but his resume is extremely long, and it's full of acronyms that I do not understand.
Good.
I thought architects were bad with acronyms.
Oh, no.
We don't have anything like it. But I am going to hit the highlights because he has a very impressive resume, and I think it's important that we appreciate the things that he's done for us. Captain Bennett was born in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I won't date you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate that.
And received his commission through the Navy ROTC program as a plank owner at the University of Arizona. Upon completion of flight training with Squadron Training 3 and Helicopter Training Squadron 18 in October 1990, he was designated a naval aviator. His operational service resume, again, is full of a lot of acronyms that I don't understand. So I'm not going to go through all of them because I will get some of them wrong, but he oversaw several squadrons specializing in mine countermeasures. He served on the USS Juno that was deployed to South Korea, executing Joint Chiefs of Staff tasking. He served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, supporting the 5th Fleet operations. After a brief tour in the Naval Air Reserve, as an instructor and training officer providing support in the community's Fleet Replacement Squadron and Detachment 1. He went as and was selected for command of the Blackhawks of HM-15 in Corpus Christi. He served as the executive and commanding officer for 700 plus sailors, 10 MH-53E aircraft, which I learned is a Sea Dragon.
You got it.
If you don't know that helicopter, look it up because it's massive. I think
It is.
one of the largest, if not the largest helicopter.
In the free world, the largest in the free world. How about that?
It is,
Okay.
it is awesome.
Yeah.
And that was part of the permanently deployed, forward deployed naval forces in the 5th Fleet supporting operations Enduring Freedom and Operations Iraqi Freedom from 2005 to 2007. That squadron earned humanitarian service awards for Joint Task Force Katrina, deployed aboard the USS Bataan, and redeployment of forces from Bahrain to Pakistan supporting Operation Lifeline, which provided humanitarian assistance in the lower Himalayas following their devastating earthquake. These actions earned the squadron the coveted Frederick L. Feinberg Award. HM-15 also executed Central Command's MK-105 mine-sweeping operations and accomplished short-notice 4-aircraft 1,000-mile transit, presidential support in Yucatan, Mexico. The MK-105 is essentially a pontoon boat with a jet engine. Is that correct?
That's basically a sled.
I looked
Yeah,
that up
exactly.
as well.
Good
I wanted to know
job.
what I was talking about.
All right, nicely done.
And that is awesome as well. You should look that up.
Yeah, very good.
His staff positions are also lengthy. I'm gonna skip.
Just
to
skip all
where
of
he's
those.
at
Yeah,
now,
just skip all of
which
those.
is, he is the 9th Commanding Officer of the Naval Air Station Fort Worth Joint Reserve Base. I welcome Captain Bennett.
All right, Sloan, I'll let you know we're always looking good for good people, okay? So if this other gig doesn't work out, you let us know. We'll sign you up. Honored to, am I working?
Yep.
Okay, so if I knew you guys are going to be videotaping me and catching every word that I said, I would have prepared. First of all, I wouldn't have stretched this haircut another week. That's one. I probably wouldn't have stayed out quite so late the other night and ate so much, but it is what it is. I'm honored to be here with you this morning. I'm leaving here in a couple months. You got a treat here too. Gil Miller is going to be my replacement, our prospective commanding officer. Stand up, Gil, one more time if you would. Gil's coming from the Pentagon. And as TD gave me a great introduction, they seem to get more handsome and smarter and younger as they come. I don't know how that works out, but Gil's going to do a phenomenal job, no doubt in my mind. He's taken more notes than I can even figure out. I think I've forgotten more stuff than what's going on, but very dynamic 2 years here. I'll discuss some of those things with you. Who here was part of the discussion when I was here? I got a chance to chat with you about a year or so ago, about a year and a half ago. So only about maybe a fourth of you. Okay, so you guys are going to get quizzed. I took a visual. You're going to get quizzed on some of the material. But today is a conversation, okay? I'm going to go over some stuff, kind of breeze through some things, hit some key specific items that I think realtors, now remember my undergraduate was real estate, so I know a little bit about real estate. You know, I've only bought and sold personally about 8 houses throughout my career, and I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express a couple nights ago too. So I think I can go toe to toe with you. But there are some very specific items that I want to make sure I cover that are unique to our business, what we do, that you can affect in very positive ways. So we're going to go through that. First of all, I love this picture. Okay, we came up with this shot here to kind of represent all of the warriors that we have out at the Naval Air Station. That's the first thing I'm going to go. It's not Carswell anymore. It's only been 18 years. I know we get stuck in some habit patterns here, but Naval Air Station, Fort Worth. Everybody say it with me one time. Naval Air Station, Fort Worth. All right, spread the word, okay? I know, like I said, it's only been 18 years, but I hear it every single day. Okay, let me make sure I'm heading in the right direction. Our mission. Mission first. We got to train our warriors, send them over the horizon to do God's work. That's it. That's what our taxpayers are paying for. You know, we're going through some challenging times. I'll discuss some of those as we go through the brief with some, you know, I call them luxuries now, of things we've become accustomed to. But we must always remember, if we take money from our installation, we take money from our folks that are doing our job, it's because we're putting money into the coffers of the folks that are strapping on these aircraft or getting on these ships or whatever the case is, or getting inside a tank. They're going over the horizon and they're making sure they keep this as an away game all the time. So always keep that into perspective. That's our job. I got no problem giving those guys money every single day because that's what they're doing. God bless them. A little bit of history about the installation. You guys probably know this better than I do, so I'll skip over this. We've been around a long time. This is a good footprint picture. And I always love to make the joke, okay, we used to have a ton of housing down here in this area. Now we have about 83 units on board the installation. We used to have a golf course because, of course, it was an Air Force base. Carswell, I got it. We gave that away, too. Lockheed is still government-owned, contractor-operated. Used to be part, but it's still, the Air Force still owns that property, if you will. And we used to have the hospital that now is the Federal Bureau of Prisons for the ladies there. Unique setup, but we still have plenty of room to operate and to do the missions that we're required to do. And, you know, one of the key aspects when the base was bracked in 94, 95 and reestablished, what an ingenious plan, you know, your leadership and you folks came up with here to make it a joint base, a reserve base, and to set up this new paradigm or dynamic that a lot of the country is getting on board with, if you will. There are many ways that we're as effective, if not more, and more efficient in spending our taxpayer dollars. And that's the key of where we're driving to tomorrow. You know, of course, every nickel and dime that is coming from taxpayer dollars is being exercised in certain ways to make sure we optimize those funds to train our warriors. The challenge is, you know, there's different services, different ways of doing business. How do we cross over those lines? Each service chief, by Title 10, is charged to man, train, and equip his warriors. But as a joint environment, we want to kind of combine those lines of funding, if you will, to have some synergies in there. That's where the challenge or the rub is, or the friction. So we work through that process every day. It's fun and it's interesting, sometimes incredibly frustrating, but it is what it is. About 11,000 folks running around. Here's that key number down here. Don't ever forget this. $2.3 billion economic impact for the region. That's just the installation. I'm not adding in Lockheed Martin's portion where obviously they use our runway basically for free every year. So they do their ops, they just come on over, the runway is basically where we stop and they start. So they come on out and use our facility all the time. So that's a huge savings to them, and also the Bureau of Prisons. So lots of partners in how we do our business. Anybody, and I'll talk about some of this too, one of my big, and I call them babies, if you will, and these are things that Gil and I have been talking about. You only get 2 years. So you show up and you say, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to affect? What needs to be done for long-term sustainability, for long-term viability? So we sat down, we came up with a strategy, and we worked like the dickens. Matter of fact, Mr. Bill Thornton here and his team and several other folks worked very hard at this, and we came up a little bit short this year, but I think we've gone a lot further than we've ever gone before, and I expect things to progress into the near future with some Texas legislature. So, anybody in here, I have a command coin, and you can't do it obviously here because you know what the answer is. But if you've read any of the stuff that I've put out every now and again, what is the Department of Defense economic impact to the state of Texas every year? Anybody got a guess? Just throw it out there. It's with billions. It's with a big B. It's more than 2.3, so you can kind of gauge that. There's about 15, and Bill, you can't answer either because I know you know. And so that's our installation. There's about 15 major installations. Remember, Fort Hood, they got like 30,000 plus warriors running around. Fort Bliss has got 20-some thousand, 17,000.
23 45.
23,
45.
50 billion.
100,
50.
50. I got you 50, Mr. Austin. All right, I'm going to give it to the man who said 100. He's closest without going over. It's $140 billion a year. 140. Think about that. Think about our industry, the Department of Defense that brings to Texas. So when we coalesced all this information, I says, holy crap. Look at some of the things that we need to do as a state. And I say we because now I'm a Texan, I think. My boy's a Texan. He was born in Corpus Christi, so I own him. So I'm part of Texas now, too. I've served here before down in Corpus Christi, one of the HM-15 Blackhawks. But my plan was, I said, okay, we need to be smart about this. I had a chance to chat with Senator Vanderpute before I came out here as a CO, and I said, what do you need? What's going on? What are the challenges? She said, well, every 2 years, what happens is each base comes up and they bring their baby to us. They said, well, I got this problem. One's got, I got to have trees down in San Antonio because this certain bird is not going to have a habitat that are going to come out to the base, and that inhibits our operations. And one is, well, I got this problem. One is, I got this problem. So it becomes white noise. What do they do? So I said, I got a plan. So we got together and we said, hey, we're going to bring all of our installation commanders together. As soon as I got here in October of 11, I said, let's sit down, let's have a plan. Let's give them a clear, concise message that they can act upon. So that's basically what we did. We sat down and said, what are our major problems? Encroachment is one. And there's kind of 2 or 3 types of, well, there's several types of encroachment. One is, and this is what has to do with you folks here, is, do we have compatible living arrangements, if you will, outside the installation and what we do? And that's obviously a big, big deal. You take a look at Oceana, unless you live underneath a rock, they've had a lot of challenges with encroachment. There's several places out in California, El Toro, Irvine, and some other spots, Miramar, that it'll shut a base down. It'll shut a base down quickly because you get the public sentiment and things just go south if folks aren't supportive. But that's one great thing about Texas. You guys are amazing. And I say this every time I get a chance to chat with folks. Number one, I love to take this half of the room, kind of send you off to California and go procreate and talk amongst yourselves. And then send the other half of the folks out to the East Coast and do the same. You guys are just great people. You're very invested in your military. You're very engaged. You're God-fearing people. And you just got the right frame of mind to support our folks. You're fantastic. So, as we talked about voting this morning, I always also say this, vote early and vote often, okay? You got to get it right, all right? You got to get it right. Well, not Chicago, but close. But, so, you know, we're on a path. You know, we've all read the news where our economy is, and obviously I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit, but we got to get this right. You know, our military, and trying to put some of this stuff into context, and now we're really going into strategy stuff here. So putting some of these things into context. 2001, 9/11 happens. Our budget for the Department of Defense was less than $300 billion, about 290, 270, somewhere, I think it was 290 something, 292. This last year, about 570 billion, so almost doubles, okay? And that's not counting overseas contingency operation funding, which is another $100+ billion over a few of those years. So we've more than doubled our budget. Obviously, we had two fronts of two wars, we got operations going on, but now we're in a challenge. So every time the United States, I say every time, the past several times, we've come out of conflict, we have a peace dividend. And everybody's been yelling and screaming about sequestration. Sequestration's happening. It's not that big of a deal. In certain ways, it's not that big of a deal. Our challenge is going to be this peace dividend that we take. That's usually about a 30% shaving off of the Department of Defense. So you figure we went from 300 billion roughly to 600 billion. So we doubled our budget, but now we're going to take roughly 30% off of that $600 billion. I think we're going to be fine. I'm pretty sure we're going to be fine. We need to get it right, but we've been at war for over a year. We have some real recapitalization issues with our aircraft, with ships, and some other things. We're going to work through that paradigm, but we got to get it right. We got to have the right folks making those decisions, thinking about that strategy, and telling the military what to do. Remember, us guys in these uniforms, all we do is execute orders. The folks that have the suits and the ties, they give us the orders. So big difference. A lot of times folks kind of forget that. We execute orders. We don't get to make the orders. Big difference. Okay, everybody's represented out at NAS Fort Worth, all of the services. Again, another ingenious portion when they put the installation together. Because as we sit down at a table, we come up with a topic. How often does everybody completely agree with the same idea? Yeah, almost never. So that is good for sustainment for the installation. It works out very well because folks say, well, I don't really like that. I want to do this, I want to do that. It keeps everybody working together. It keeps the conversation going. 76 aircraft out on board the installation as of today. About $3 billion worth of our hard-earned taxpayers' dollars. Okay, so that's the reason why not everybody gets to come out there and cruise around and check things out. Sometimes, but then we have to go through a whole different security posture and fun things to do. But if you want to come visit, I'll make sure at the end there's a slide with my information on it. Come on out. I know we've had some folks come on out and take a tour and drive around here a little while ago. What was that? It was about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, somewhere in there. Yeah, somewhere in there. So we got a chance to drive around a little bit, see some of the hardware, do some stuff. Even have a cold beverage here and there, so it's all good. All right, so encroachment. This is why I brought our expert here, Miss Rachel Wiggins. She is our community planning liaison officer, so if you give me any hard questions, I'll defer them to her. But when I first got here, we take a look at, again, this plan, this strategy. So when I had a chance to take a look at the verbiage of BRAC, the reason why, again, this is what they put in print, the reason why Carswell was closed in the BRAC language, it said, we see no long-term value in this installation due to local and regional encroachment. So I'm like, well, that's not good news because that's incredibly difficult to fix because you can't go buy a piece of property and kick people out of their house. You can't do that type of stuff anymore, if you will. Or you shouldn't do that. How about that? So that's a bit of a challenge. But so we looked at that, and that's how we craft our strategy over the last 2 years. How do we make sure that every single decision that the city of Fort Worth, let me give you the list here of all of our neighbors around the installation. So we got Fort Worth, we obviously have Tarrant County, we got Lake Worth, we got Sansom Park, we got River Oaks, we got White Settlement, we got Westworth Village, I don't know if I said that already or not. We got Benbrook, and I'm sure there's something, is that it? Okay, I got him. Oh, well, I get a medal too. All right, good. But so that's a lot of partners for us to make sure that we get right. Everybody's on the same sheet of music, and we're always heading in the right direction. And I can say, knock on wood, it's not wood, it's plastic, but knock on wood, every decision that we've made since I've been here in the last 2 years, none of them have been negative. We may have 1 or 2 slightly lateral decisions on encroachment, but all the others have been overwhelmingly positive. And again, that's due to Bill Thornton and his team, the City of Fort Worth, and our Regional Coordination Committee. This committee, when we had this joint land use study, which basically goes into all this technical jargon stuff, but basically us as an organization, Department of Defense, looks at all of these different challenges, okay? We look at, you know, obviously where people live, how much noise, zoning problems, air, water, all kinds of stuff, frequency stuff, to make sure that whatever operations that we're doing now, and we also just did a refresh on this, so I said, hey, I want to look 20, 25 years out in the future. Tell me about F-35. Tell me about drones, unmanned aerial systems. Tell me about frequency requirements. Tell me about this. So we put all of this stuff in there. Tell me about helicopters. I want to make sure that 20 to 25 years from now, the guy sitting over there getting ready to take over says, hey, this guy Rob Bennett had a pretty good idea. He made sure that we were well postured for the future. So that's what we took a really hard look at to make sure we get it right. So when we get this document, years ago, the Department of Defense in their finite wisdom, they would sit on it, which made absolutely no sense. So how do I go tell all those cities, these are our needs, these are our requirements? Well, we didn't used to do that. But now, the light bulb has come on, now we do it. So we give this document to all these cities, and they get to kind of massage this material, and they come up with what's called a joint land use study. So they all get together and say, okay, these are your requirements, but here's our requirements. Now how do we work together so we can be symbiotic and work together? So that's the idea. So we can grow and develop. And I remember the first couple of things I said too. We have to have a win-win paradigm. In order to get the very best warriors out at NAS Fort Worth, we've got to have good schools. We've got to have good jobs. They've got to have places where they want to come visit. They want to eat. They want to have fun. They want to live for 2 to 3 to 4 years. If this place is a dump, those are the kind of warriors that I'm going to get. They don't want to come here. So I want you to grow and thrive, but I also need to sustain what our training requirements are. So that's where this work comes together. So this joint land use study, one of the recommendations was, hey, we need to get together and have conversations. We need to talk about this stuff. So every couple of months, that's exactly what we do. We get everybody to sit down at a table, a couple of these together, and say, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I give them a brief from the base. These are the things that are going on. So we basically do a joint land use study every couple of months instead of every 5 years. What a great program. When my boss came down here, who's in charge of all the naval bases on the planet, he loved this program. I couldn't give him enough information about it. I said, boss, if there's something that you need to take and send throughout everybody else, this is it. So he's working on that now, and we'll see how far they get. But I also think the specifics of that, the reason why it works so well is because you're Texans. You guys get it, and you work together. I haven't seen that throughout my career in a lot of other places. So I think that's why we're doing so well. You all understand the win-win principle. So that's good stuff. All right, this just kind of gives you some notional idea of our footprint. You know, as of today, can I say this out loud in public, what's coming up with Fort Worth, the city of Fort Worth? Is it in here? Well, that doesn't mean I can say it out loud just because I put it in here. Okay, so Fort Worth is working on establishing a zoning, an airport zoning overlay at the north and south end of our runway. Unfortunately, what we've been doing for the last forever years is being reactive. Our idea is let's be proactive. Let's tell everybody, and there's 2 pieces to this, because one I'm going to tell you and see what your guys' feedback is. One is, hey, this is a type of business or property that you can use and develop and exercise, if you will, in this area. Because there's very specific requirements. You know, right at the end of the runway, where's the plane going to hit the ground when he's closest to the ground? So at the end of the runway or the beginning of the runway, it's called a clear zone. We don't want anything in there, even though there's a couple little bits and pieces there, but very little bit. The other 2 are accident potential zones. Everybody hears accident potential and kind of gets excited. Let me put that into context for you. Accident potential means statistically, we've done the analysis again. When are you going to have a mishap? Typically when you're near the runway. Either taking off, that's probably the most dangerous time because you're putting a lot of power in there. You don't have a lot of airflow over the wings. And the aircraft is under the most amount of stress, if you will. So that's the most treacherous time, if you will. So we want to keep it as safe as we possibly can. But when you talk about accident potential zones, so that's just a statistical analysis, all right? Let me put it into what it means. So every 100,000 hours of aviation flight for the Navy and Marine Corps, we have about one mishap. And that goes all the way from training, a guy getting off of a tractor on the farm, going out to Pensacola and learning how to fly, to our young men and women in combat getting shot at every day and somebody's trying to kill them. All of these hours are all stacked together. So you can imagine our environment here is quite benign, if you will, except for weather and whatever the case may be, but they're not under either one of those other treacherous portions of training somebody to fly and or getting shot at, somebody's trying to kill them. So I can't say we're never going to have an accident, but that puts that into perspective for you. So the other piece is this yellow and green shading. That's our noise footprint. So my request is, once we get this zoning piece done, is we say, okay, now we should probably start talking to folks, say, hey, if you're in these noise areas, there are some things that you should do to make sure that you're compatible with us. Sound attenuation, so there's special things you can do. Make sure you cover up any holes to the outside, if you will, all kinds of other stuff. But it makes it more compatible. So when you're inside your home, you're like, oh my God, those guys are flying again. Or, oh my, that's not what we want. You Texans here are fantastic. You get it. You understand. The problem is, you're so daggone good, and Texas is so fantastic, everybody and their brothers come and live here. Okay, and they're not Texans. So they may not feel the same way you do. That's basically what happened in Virginia and California. So they get people from outside to come in, and then they start bitching about the base, and then things go south. That's what we don't want. So let's be proactive. Let's be out in front of this. This is my second piece. This is one thing, in my opinion, Texas needs. You guys need a disclosure statement. When you sell property around an installation or around basically a DOD facility that makes noise or does strange things, you should probably tell people. There's several states in the union that do that already, but that alleviates somebody from outside coming in, buying a house, and then next week's like, well, you didn't tell me this. And then they start complaining. Then we got to deal with it. And folks wash their hands, they walk away, but that's a big problem for us. Okay? So that's something that, I hope Gil's writing that one down. Disclosure statement, in my opinion, is a big deal. And I know Arizona and a few other places, I think Virginia has it now also, but I think that's very, very important to protect that $140 billion industry that you have here. So very important. All right, land use recommendations. I kind of talked about that, the clear zones, the accident potential zones. I'll make sure you obviously have a copy of this brief too, because there's a bunch of, what can you do in APZ1 and what types of businesses are compatible. Basically, it has to do with density of people. Do we want a bunch of people congregating in areas where statistically, if we're having a mishap, that's where they're going to happen? So of course not. So clear zone, we don't want any people in there. APZ1, we want less density. APZ2, you can have a little bit more density, but not as much. And then everything else is basically clear. So that kind of sums it up. Is that right? Is that a good overlay? Did I miss something critical there? Okay, good. I'll keep going then. All right. Make sure the boss has that. So here's one of the pieces that I drove very, very hard during my time frame. So while I'm going through my extensive one-week training to be a commanding officer of a naval air station, okay, and I can't say this out loud, they're taping it. So, okay, so I go through this training, and I'm sitting down with a couple guys, and I'm really starting to learn about this wind turbine challenge. And I think I talked about this last time. Wind turbines are a big deal. Matter of fact, there's an article that was just printed, and I'll make sure I include that with the brief. We're doing a ton of studies. So basically, if you have a wind turbine within 20 to 25 miles of our radar, and our radar is line of sight, and that's what this big gray blob is. That's what our young men and women who are tracking airplanes see. That's what they can see, okay? If somebody's flying around, it's got to be greater than 40 knots. They're out there flying around, that's what they see. Anybody who's cruising around in that blob, and there's different altitudes for line of sight due to topography and all kinds of other fun things, that's what they see. So if there's a wind turbine set up in there and we can see it, those blades are cruising faster than 40 knots. And when that radar energy hits the wind turbine blade, it basically disintegrates it, it shatters it. So it becomes very, very challenging. We have what we call scatter, or I call it a blob. Basically, it's unsafe. That's the only way to put it. You have health and safety issues. So we either have false positives or false negatives, and neither one of those are good. Now, for the military guys, we track them because we have certain codes that we put in our aircraft, and we always make sure that we're talking to folks. But mom and pops that are out there flying around, they're not required to do that all the time. So we don't want one of our warriors pranging into mom and pop who's out on a Sunday afternoon cruise. Okay? So that's where health and safety comes in. Corpus Christi, Kingsville, Dias, and a couple other folks having some significant challenges with these radars. So what we did is, as is Texas Commanders Council, as I told you, we got all of the installation commanders together. We went down and we started telling everybody and their brotherhood, listen, we need to come up with some sort of catalyst to be proactive. What we've been doing is they develop these things, and then we say, well, crap, that's going to be a problem. So then we figure out ways to mitigate it. That's not how we should be doing business. Our idea is to get to the left of the problem and sit down and have a conversation. Where do you want to build them? Let's do a study. Let's see what the challenges are going to be. Let's mitigate that. Let's work together. Every time we've done that here locally, it worked out like a champ. We've had, what, 4 proposed? We've had 4 proposed wind turbines around our installation, and as you see, none of them are up there right now. Because we sit down, we have conversations with these folks, and they realize what the challenge and or the impact is going to be, and or we get some strong arms to come move in and do stuff, and things happen to work out in our favor. And remember, all I can do is make recommendations. Was it NDA 11 or 12 that came up with the siting clearing? 11? So they put into law, our administration put into law in 11, that basically completely handcuffed installation commanders. We're no longer able to object. Okay? So again, all we do is really make recommendations of, hey, this is compatible or this is not. But now if we don't agree with something but they're still moving forward, what we have to do is we go through our whole chain of command to this siting clearinghouse up in the Secretary of Defense's office. So it goes from me, it goes to my regional commander, it goes to our higher headquarters in DC, then it goes over to the Navy, then the Navy vets it, then it goes over to OSD, then they vet it, and then they get it into the Deputy Secretary of Defense or Secretary of Defense. And the threshold that is in law, it has to be, what's the exact, threatened to national security. That's basically, that's a pretty doggone high threshold. You know, do we think NAS Fort Worth is going to meet that threshold? My answer is probably not. Do I think some other installations around the country? Probably not. We do have some specific installation that does very unique training or testing that it does meet that threshold, because they may do something unique in the country that nobody else does. So if they get impacted, then we do have to make some changes or do some things. So this is still an ongoing saga. NAS Corpus Christi and NAS Kingsville has 3 or 4 projects that have been proposed and they're in work, and they're going to be a real challenge. You know, they have an agreement, the Navy's worked through it. This is very politically sensitive with the Navy, with the administration, and with the developers, so we're going to see how all this plays out. Everybody's working together now and having a discussion, but man, it sure would have been great if we had done this before they built these things. We would be miles ahead of where we're at. The developers would have saved a ton of money, and we would be safer and be able to sustain our training requirements, in my opinion, probably better. So this is where the challenge is. So we tried to get legislation. We had a couple bills that were identified. One was kind of a pilot program, and one was a statewide overarching program, and neither one of them really made it to where they need to get to go. So, but I think we got a lot of people's ears. Remember, this is a lot of money we're talking about. You know, a lot of money for landowners. God bless Texas. You guys are wickedly strong property rights folks, which is great. I'm with you. But sometimes we got to make a couple little changes to how we do business to make sure the overarching good gets done. So we'll see how that works out. More to follow. Other concerns, the EMI is what we call that, basically that radar interference, electromagnetic interference. Real estate disclosure, I discussed that. When our guys are flying around, you know, our big advantage when we go to war is our technology. We own the night. The other folks and lots of things we're doing, they do not. That's our advantage. But the problem is when you're flying around in the United States, there's a ton of lighting and lots of other stuff going on. You know, you go overseas and it's just the moon or maybe a couple of things here and there. So certain types of lighting get to be a challenge for us. And that's what we need to make sure that we have identified and understand, so again, so we can be proactive and we don't put these young men and women's life at risk. Because some of these types of LED lightings and some other things are blinding to when you're on goggles. And some of them, get this is gorgeous. You'll have a tower and they'll put up an LED lighting, but it's blind to our goggles. So it's not the kind of lighting we need. So we need to get the spectrum of each of these. And you know, I thought, you know, being a simple helicopter guy, hey, an LED light's an LED light. No. There's all kinds of different frequencies and spectrums in this range of lighting. So we need to identify which ones we can see, which ones we can't see, which ones are compatible, and then make sure we get that out and share that with all of you so we get it right when we do these obstacle avoidance types things, or we're setting up billboards around installations or doing that types of stuff. So we're getting there. I think this is that my last one? Oh, yeah, good. Okay. All right, so now's the time you're supposed to start asking questions, or I keep blathering on about other stuff. Okay, I keep blathering on about other stuff. Anytime you want to ask a question, please, anything at all. Yes, sir.
Well, first, I want to thank you for your tenure at Carswell.
You're killing it.
And it's been a blessing for your tenure here.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
A big, significant contribution. My question is, I represent clients in property tax valuation, and I got 3 significant calls this year. If you could address the issue, and this is the issue, in a letter that they received, and I haven't even seen the letter yet, it only came out recently apparently. If they're vacant for more than 6 months, I'm told that they would revert under this new program to industrial storage use only. That would be significant since 2 of these clients own property in and around Ridgemar Mall.
Right.
Can you address that issue?
I can tell you what I know. How about that? Which isn't much there, Mr. McCollum, but I'll tell you what I know. So again, we go back to the win-win proposition. And I understand that these are, you know, people's livelihood. If the base goes away, everybody around, as we've known, you know, everything just basically goes to crap if the base goes away. You're talking about a huge economic impact. So let's make some adjustments now to make sure into the future we keep that $2 billion plus flowing into the city of Fort Worth and the region, and that business that they adjust to is sustainable. I think that's the right answer for the long term. I can understand today when you stare at it, hey, you're making an impact on my livelihood. There are a lot of options, a lot of opportunities, and we've sat down and discussed several different businesses around the installation that initially were not compatible with the plan that they had. And Rachel and myself and a few other folks, you know, we worked, you know, one specific one was Casino Beach. What a great project. What a great plan for the city to bring in revenue, go through this process. But initially, that had a lot of problems because that is right in the northwest portion of the installation. There's an ingress and egress route. I said, okay, we need to work through this whole thing. First of all, you can't really say this. You can't, not you can't. I recommend you don't say these kinds of things. I recommend we zone it in this posture. That way, if and when somebody from DC is going through a BRAC-like assessment, we don't pop on the radar. So that was the plan. So the idea with this is the same. Is when, you know, that language in BRAC said, you know, significant encroachment, low long-term value. I want every single decision that we make to be moving forward. And we have a great legacy of that. We can't change that. Now, as I said, we haven't gone in reverse. We have had a couple decisions that are kind of lateral. So that's where we've made some, I wouldn't call them concessions, but compromises. We say, okay, I understand what you want to do here. How many people are in that kind of business? So where were we at before? One key one would be MedStar's new facility. You know, at first it was like, that's just not compatible. You know, this is what they're going to be doing. That's not really right. But so we really looked into the details of how many people we're talking about, how long they're going to be there, what are their operations, what frequencies, what this, what that, and we came up with a great compromise. So it's kind of a lateral move. Is it the very best? In my opinion, as the installation commander, no, it's not the very best. The very best would be put a park up there. But we can't have parks everywhere. We could, but you're not going to make money off of a park, if you will. So we went through that process. And I think as we sit down, we have the full investment, the full engagement of the city, the chamber. Everybody sits down at the table. We'll come up with a win-win solution. There's no doubt in my mind.
There needs to be some adjustment in what I've heard. I haven't seen it. I'll close with one other
Certainly.
request. And something that's dear to my heart here is the dedication of the USS Fort Worth. Can you give us an update before you close your story today?
What I know is, first of all, they're doing fantastic. You hear about the little littoral combat ships in the news quite a bit. You know, they're going to be forward deployed over in Singapore, I believe it is. And then they're going to rotate crews out of there. And that's a way for us to save money, to save on rework costs, and not spend the money of, you know, and the wear and tear and that opportunity cost of sending that ship back and forth across the Pacific. So that whole plan is working out very well. There are still some nuances, you know. You have a plan, you have a framework. Now you go put it into practice, and or you take it out into real operations, and then you see if all your brain trust was right. So there's still massaging some things there, but I speak with the skipper, Hank Miller, quite a bit. Great guy. And Warren Cups also. So both two fantastic, great COs to start off with, and they're doing fabulously. If you get a chance to go out and visit them before they go to Singapore, but unless you'd like to go to Singapore to visit them, but they're doing very, very well. They still have some things that the Navy's working through. They have one of, if not the toughest training paradigm of sailors, because they have so many different jobs and skill sets that they have to learn and do. They have a long, very long training plan, so it's very, very difficult.
And only 42 on board.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to figure out and massage of, you know, 42 is kind of the core, and then what mission set do you have? They bring the package on board. What other things can they do? Do we need to have more than 42 as the core? You know, so we're working through some of those things, and you know, luckily I don't know all the devils in the details, but when I chat with those guys, they're always very optimistic, they're very upbeat, they're very motivated. The crews seem to be the exact same way. They're going to get this done, they're going to figure it out, they're going to get it right. And there's a lot of oversight. That can be good and that can be bad. In my opinion, in this case, it's very good, because they're asking them, what do you need? We don't always get that. It's usually just get the job done. Right now they're asking, what do you need? Which is the right question. Make sure we get this mix right, we get that new platform correct, and we can optimize that to its optimum capability. So great question. Thank you, sir. Anybody else for it? Yes, sir.
Sure. I think you said
Uh-oh.
total 570 billion, 570 billion?
140.
No, all U.S.
I don't know what the U.S. is, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're talking about Department of Defense. That's just our budget.
Yeah,
That's not the economic impact.
570 billion.
570 billion.
And we've got 140? Now, why so low? We need to up that.
Well,
This is Texas.
we are number one or number two for the amount of economic impact of all of the states. And California, you know, we're kind of back and forth, number one and number two. But I think we're number one for number of personnel. We have over 200,000 folks here with the active component in the Guard. You know, and remember, those are different numbers. I say $140 billion is how we do this algorithm of, you know, how much you get paid, contracts, and all the other type of stuff that goes on. But this is what you feel as an economic impact when folks do that study. And I like the veracity of this because we actually went down to the state comptroller's office and they did this for each of the installations. So again, you guys in Texas are phenomenal partners. Because before we had all these different studies, and depending on who you pay and what he had, what kind of coffee he had in the morning, you'd get a different answer. I'm like, I want something that I can sink my teeth into, and I know it's the right answer. So state comptroller's office was the right one. It's a big deal. Make sure that we sustain our installations, and we don't have negative feedback. The Department of Defense doesn't like to have an installation, and everybody around it complains about it. So how do we make sure that we get that mix right to make sure it's a fully sustainable program? So those are two things that I know right off the top of my head that we as Texas can improve upon to improve our posture for the future to get more money coming in from the Department of Defense.
It's all in the way that we explain it. Had the New York stepped out of my pickup, New York guy stepped out of my pickup, out on the ranch, big pile. Oh, no. Oh, buddy, that smells like money. I mean, that noise that we hear in our project across the street from you, where Best Buy, 24-hour, and all
Right,
that,
right.
the big one over there that looks like one of your runways that
Yep.
we're planning 650,000 square feet of industrial on. We tell people, no, that's the sound of freedom.
That's exactly right. And I agree with all of you. Of course, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm with you. The problem is you guys are so doggone good, you're getting other people coming in from outside the states who don't think the way you think. So that's what we need to think about in the future. So let me tell you one more key point to that I think is critical, and I put this in here, is our demographics. You people here and our economics of how much it costs to do business. This is one of the things I want to take back to the Department of Defense that I think is very, very important. It's economics, it's basic economics. How much does it cost, lock, stock, and barrel, tooth to tail, to do business? It's cheap in Texas. Real estate's cheap, transportation's cheap, cost of living's cheap, operating's relatively cheap. It costs a lot of money to do that in California. So why don't we look at that as a Department of Defense, say, hey, when businesses decide where they're going to go and how they're going to do business, they look at this. I think this is an important aspect that we need to bring about. And we have the people and the expertise and the skill sets to flood those units when they stand them up to get the right folks in there to serve. So those are two key aspects, in my opinion, that we need to make sure that gets articulated not only to military leadership, but political leadership. So I agree with your thought process, sir. Yes, sir.
Kind of going back to the noise footprint, and a lot of cities, whether it be joint or civilian, they had a lot of credits for doing windows and soundproofing. Are any of those things out there right now for the people that live in those footprints, or is there any proposals for new windows or soundproofing?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We're doing a lot of that stuff. Rachel, go ahead and fill in the gap real quick.
Yeah, kind of two pieces. One is that if you live near a municipal airport, there's actually funding through FAA to do things like that, but around military bases, there is no such funding that's been established. But we have been working with our partners at the Council of Governments. They received a grant on behalf of the cities around us through HUD to look at where is there overlap between sound attenuation and the energy code and identify funding priorities to move forward. So we've got a good long-term plan, but no funding identified specifically today to make improvements.
So those are great points, and that's one of the key aspects is our energy conservation ties in very well with sound attenuation also. So there's a lot of overlap there that can be dual use, if you will. So we'll see how that works out. Yes, sir.
What's your assignment?
I'm going to the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Manpower, Reserve Affairs for the Navy and Marine Corps. So what that really means is, I think we're going to look at people policy. What benefits, how we serve, how we take care of families, what's the right policy. Our retirement and some of our stuff has been in place since the Civil War. So there's things we need to adjust and change with the times. And our health package and some of the things we're doing, it's just unsustainable. So we need to figure out how do we massage that to sustain that very delicate balance of our all-volunteer force, and yet make sure that we take care of our warriors and what they do. So that's what we're going to be kind of working through. So.
In D.C.?
In D.C., yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Captain, this isn't a local question, but I'm curious your opinion about the ongoing massive effort by the Chinese government to infiltrate, hack our computer systems, our weapons and operation systems. What do you think about that? How are we going to combat that? It's a serious problem.
Probably should turn the camera off, but okay.
I can if you want me to.
No, you leave it on. Here's what I think. When I was back in D.C., one of my great opportunities, I got to go to the Industrial College of the Armed Forces for about 10, 11 months. And my focus of study was telecommunications. So we delved into this quite a bit. And number one, is there a risk? Is there a challenge out there? You bet. And you take a look at the Department of Defense and all the services are building up their cybersecurity capability. Remember, this is kind of 2 or 3 phase process. Number 1 is the defensive posture to keep them from getting out. But we also have offensive capabilities. There are some amazing things that you can do just sitting behind a keyboard. So you kind of mix all of that stuff together. Me personally, what I would like to see, and I think we're already down this road, we're getting down there. You know, a lot of our grid that we have throughout the country is private. You know, we do a lot of the stuff over the private, or you can get in via private, or how that works out. I would love to see the Department of Defense really get in, and I think we're doing this already, you know, really work together with the private industry, get all of the best minds in the country working together, because this is America's problem. This is not Department of Defense's problem or a private problem. This is our problem. And that's how China thinks. They think about China. That's how we need to think in this regard. We can't have us and them. We got to have us, all of us. So that's kind of how I think about it. Our challenges we're going to have in the near future is all going to be technology, in my opinion. You know, it's going to be how do we affect change through these types of capabilities. So I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
This is probably more a comment than a question, but you're going to be gone. Gil's going to be here. Our state legislature meets only once every 2 years.
Right.
And you've discussed a lot of ideas that actually need legislative solutions. The Texas Association of Realtors has nearly 90,000 members, and we have, as you can tell from Robert Gleason's presentation earlier, a very active legislative program. So, Gil, I would encourage you to get together with the Realtor group, because a lot of the things you talked about affect private property rights.
Right.
That's right in our wheelhouse
Exactly.
from a legislative standpoint. And also, when you start talking about things like disclosures, yeah, that's,
Everybody in your wheelhouse
we're
too.
the ones who are going to have to deliver those
Exactly.
to the prospective buyer.
Exactly.
So I would highly encourage that coordination gets set up, and either set up or tightened up, whichever.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agree. So Gil's writing that down. Good. Who else got a question? Yes, sir.
One of your points there talks about natural gas. What's going on with converting?
All right, good question. Okay, so here's what, you know, natural gas is everywhere, right? Okay, especially around our area. Lake Worth, up north, down south, east side. Every once in a while we're dodging the towers when guys are re-drilling. We have 3 or 4 wells that have been tapped right around the installation. So a couple years ago, when TD's turning over and I'm taking over, you know, we're talking about it. He said, you know, we should probably try and pump the natural gas out from underneath the installation. We own 1,800 acres. So I did a bunch of research. We paid guys to come on out and do all of the history, all the real estate history, figure out if we own all the mineral rights. We do. Good stuff. So my plan was like, oh, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. I said, we're going to be the first installation that is working for free. You know? We got millions of dollars underneath the base, and you know, you want to talk about making sure an installation has no chance of ever closing, if you will. Obviously, can't say that. But, you know, something that is such added benefit that, you know, you wouldn't be considered, if you will. Here's the challenge. The challenge is, you know, gas prices are relatively low right now. So we've done this research. Is there an opportunity to go and get these resources and make money for the Department of Defense? You bet. But the idea now is I see it as a treasure chest. I want to tap it when it's optimal for us, because we have to spend a lot of money up front before we can go and get this stuff. So I want to kind of get the best bang for our buck. So we talked to our boss, we briefed him, we did the study, and some of this research right now costs a bit of money, and we just don't have those funds. So should we do it now and then just put this plan on the shelf and let it sit there for a while, or should we wait until it's more opportunistic? So that's the plan.
Well, I was thinking more of converting a lot of our planes, trains, and everything to natural gas.
That process is underway in certain areas. I'm sure you've heard of the green fleet. We have this biofuel and all these other types of things we're doing. The Department of Defense, I mean, we're all over energy. Energy is one of our top priorities. You know, we've been charged by the Secretary of the Navy. So he took a 2005 baseline and says, okay, by the year 2025, using this baseline, 50% of our energy uses is going to be through renewable sources. So that's what we're doing. So right now, I'm charged with every single year to decline my energy uses by 3% year after year. So I'm taking a look at every single AC unit that we have out at the base. Matter of fact, we got like 4 buildings right now that are being done to get them fixed up and running. We're changing temperatures, if you will. We're setting them to a certain level and a temperature differential of outside and different things that we do to make sure it's inhabitable, but yet we're saving money. We're figuring out, we've changed out a lot of our lighting throughout there, so we're all over this. All of the low-hanging easy fruit, though, unfortunately, is about gone now. So now it's the hard stuff that really costs money to make or affect change. So that's what we're doing. And the last piece is habit patterns, our culture. So we're making sure that our folks understand, hey, what can we do to conserve energy and how we operate, and make sure that's still a part of our folks' thought process when they're out there operating. I hope that answers your question. I think the transition to natural gas, I'll give you another great story, and I know I'm running way over. I'll be here all day. I got nothing else to do. But the chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey, came down to visit months ago. Matter of fact, Mr. Thornton, I gave him a call and says, okay, I've been tasked with putting on a dog and pony for him for about an hour and a half. I says, I can juggle, but not that long. I said, so what do you think we should do? So we chatted for a little bit. I called my buddy back who works on his staff. I says, hey, I'm thinking about these 3 or 4 things. I'm thinking water. I'm thinking, because, of course, his idea is he wants to think 50 to 100 years down the road. What changes do we need to do? What do we start to need to do to make sure that we're postured for the future? And that was one of them. Say, hey, natural gas or oil and how we use energy. So we got a team together to go meet with him for about an hour and a half of experts and businessmen around the area. And he took like 7 or 8 pages of notes, the chairman did. Great discussion, and the key item, one of those, was natural gas. And how our country, in my opinion, the next 3 to 5 years, matter of fact, I ran home and told my wife this, I said, we are not buying a new car unless it uses natural gas too. So she's looking. But I think the infrastructure, and I think the proposition of that is coming. The transportation of natural gas, obviously you go over to Europe and Russia and those other places, I mean, it's astronomical. It's 3 or 4 times what we're paying for it. So we have to be able to get it over there to make the money. So those are all the things that we're working on to get that piece together. And there's a lot of large companies out there that are transitioning natural gas, and once we get the infrastructure to get it across the country, that's when I think the rapid change is going to come. And I know the Department of Defense has certain installations that do a lot of these things. We have a lot of test programs for zero emissions and all kinds of stuff. Recycling, you name it, we're working on it to try and save us money. Somebody else over here. Yes, sir.
What are the challenges and/or opportunities of working with 2 other large airports in our area, Alliance Airport and GFWAR?
Okay, great question. One of the other key aspects when Carswell was closed, and the brainchild of what is now Naval Air Station Fort Worth, was moving NAS Dallas out of where they were because they were in conflict with DFW. So now over at NAS Fort Worth, we're no longer in conflict. They set up these corridors. They got an ingress and egress route. I mean, you want to talk about just a win-win, phenomenal plan to make this an enduring installation. That's what they built. So when you talk about Alliance and Meacham, we work hand in glove with Meacham every single day. Alliance really isn't that much of an impact. Matter of fact, we have a lot of military folks that go in and out of there because, I guess they get free popcorn or something. We don't give that out. I don't know. But they have contract fuel up there. So we work very closely. I talk with Mr. Harris. He's the new airport manager up there for Alliance. So we chat all the time about how can we serve each other. And again, that's why it's so phenomenal to work here, because it's all about relationships and working together. And everybody here's door is open, and they're willing to talk and have a conversation, see how we can work things out. So hopefully I answered your question. Yeah. Very, very symbiotic. Works out very, very well. I think somebody over here had a question. All right. So lunch is going to be served in about 10 or 15 minutes. I just want to say again, I thank all of you for who you are and what you do. It has been such an honor to serve here. I remember about 7 years ago when I was in command, and I'm like, all right, what am I going to do when I have to grow up, and I'm figuring all this stuff out, and then, well, geez, I never thought I'd get this far. My wife definitely didn't think I'd get this far, but so then, and my parents didn't either, so it's all a blessing. But so then I'm like, well, I got to figure out what I want to do. You got to tell people, in this business, hey, this is what I want. Otherwise, it's kind of all up to chance. So that was about the time I started looking at all the tea leaves and I said, well, this is going away, so that's really what I wanted to do, but that's not going to work. It was operational. NAS Fort Worth. That's where I'm going. That's what I want to do. For 6 years, 6 to 7 years, that's all I said. And holy crap, was I right. So you guys are phenomenal, working with all of you, working with all of the cities, working with the chamber, working with the COG, working with all of you folks who will listen and do. You're just phenomenal. You're fantastic. And I'm going to tell you this, Gil, and they're going to capture it right now on tape. If you screw this up, you are a moron. You cannot screw this up. These are the greatest people on the planet. So I thank you for who you are, what you do, and on behalf of our 11,000 warriors out there, part of my job or challenge, as I call it, I laugh about it, is people give us stuff. They try and take care of our troops. We've had folks send warriors to the Super Bowl. We have guys, to the World Series. We have guys have box seats at, the football games. Things our warriors could never afford or even fathom to do because of the money they make or what they do. That's a big opportunity challenge there, but you take care of them. So ethically, that's one of the things I do is I get the lawyer and says, hey, I got 4 tickets to the World Series. I really want to go. He says, well, sir, you can't go, but any of your warriors can go. I'm like, all right, pick some of our 4 best sailors. Master Chief, go get some guys. And these guys just had a blast. And then we do the same thing with the football games. With the Crown Invitational out here, we had guys tending the tee. We had our folks running around. They had a Patriot Center set up for it. I mean, that's phenomenal for these young men and women to do, to get out and to experience Fort Worth, experience other things that they don't get to experience, and to show your appreciation for them. I hope they tell you thank you as much as you tell them thank you, but they get it and they understand, because every time I'm talking to them, I tell them, you better not screw this up, because these are great people. This is a two-way street. They're taking care of you. You're doing a great job, but when you go out in the city, you better be a good ambassador and not embarrass me. And I think they've done very, very well. So I'm very proud of them, and I'm awful proud of you, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you so much.
Excited when they start drilling and we get a tax credit, I guess. I'm in the blast zone.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming. Captain Miller, we look forward to seeing you around town and hopefully having you come in one day. And Ms. Wiggins, thanks for attending as well. VLK, we appreciate your support and sponsorship and being here this morning. Couldn't do it without you guys, as well as our other 2013 advertisers that are on the board, just over there to the right. Thank you for coming. I look forward to seeing you at our next event.
you doing? I'm Casey Tunney. Yeah, nice to meet you, Clay. I just graduated from TCU in December. I've been working at SU for 4 months, and I've paid my SUR turned in my application for signatures, and I was wondering if I could get your signature on the application. Yes, sir. So that I can get that application turned in. I paid the dues a couple months ago, and then it just kind of fell off the to-do list to get that application into. Thank you very much, Clay. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you as well.
Okay, good.